Ensuring you meet your NDIS insurance requirements is a key part of starting your business as an independent support worker. The last thing you want is not only an injured client or a damaged piece of property, but also someone knocking on your door demanding tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So in this video, we're going to look at the 3 most common types of insurance that you might need as an independent support worker. We're going to look at whether you actually do need insurance, how much it's going to cost, and lastly, we'll cover some important considerations when you're actually purchasing your policy. Before we get into all that though, if you're an independent support worker, this channel is designed entirely for you. All different types of topics related directly to independence, no large providers, no participants, just you guys. So make sure to hit subscribe and keep yourself updated. And if you'd like to join a Facebook group exclusively for independent support workers, there'll be a link for that down in the description as well. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm in no way a legal professional or associated with any insurance companies. You should ensure that you get advice tailored to your circumstances and that you do your own research and have your own understanding before you purchase a policy. Alright, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's start with what is public liability insurance. So public liability insurance is designed to protect you against claims that relate to an injury or property damage while you are operating your business. So this will generally cover you for things like injury of a client or a member of the public, damage to property due to negligence, and legal costs of defending or processing that claim. However, keep in mind that what is covered and how much you're covered to will depend greatly on your individual policy. The next one is professional indemnity insurance. Professional indemnity insurance aims to protect you against claims of negligence or breach of duty. So this could be things like misleading or negligent advice, breaches involving confidential or sensitive information, misplacing client documents, and again, costs of a legal defense. The last type of insurance that you will likely need as an independent support worker is personal accident and illness insurance. This one aims to provide a weekly benefit, generally up to approximately 85% of your normal income, in the event that you are taken out of work by obviously an injury or an illness. Generally speaking, you have to be out of work for a set period of time before this will kick in, and you'll often need a doctor to sign off that you are actually unfit for work. So as I said, it generally covers you for loss of income, but it can also be extended to cover you for death benefits, disablement, and or business expenses. However, those are generally extensions of the policy and you'll pay more for those things. And there's a couple of common things that it generally won't cover, and so they include pregnancy or childbirth, pre-existing conditions, intentional criminal or self-caused acts, professional or high-risk sports such as motorsports, and alcohol or drugs. So those are the 3 types of insurance that you'll most likely be looking at as an independent support worker, but do you actually need them? And just quickly before we get into that, I mentioned earlier that we have a Facebook group exclusively for independent support workers. So that is a group where you can have discussions, ask questions, get answers, share tips and tricks, etc. And it's exclusively for independents. There's no participants, there's no large providers, there's no other businesses trying to sell to you. It's a place where we can speak openly and share advice and keep up to date on the ever-changing rules of the NDIS. So if you'd like to join that group, there's a link in the description. I'd love to see you there. Alright, so do we need insurance as independent support workers? If you are a registered provider or a registered support worker, then you do need insurance. As to what insurance you need, that's a little bit of a grey area, but when you look online under the NDIS's rules, registered providers do need to have appropriate insurance. And from the research I've done on what is considered appropriate insurance, the 3 types of insurance that I've already mentioned are the most appropriate for independent support workers. For larger providers or providers that are providing high risk supports, you will likely end up needing a higher level or additional types of insurance. As an unregistered provider, there is no legal mandate that says you must have insurance. However, you will likely find that participants will pretty much demand that you have insurance. One, it covers them, but also from your perspective, as a sole trader, which you most likely are, you need to understand that generally if a claim comes about and you're a sole trader, the legal liability will be placed onto you personally. For companies, the legal liability will generally be placed on the company entity and not the individual person, but for sole traders, you are the business. Not only that, but for things like loss of income when you're an independent support worker, if you can't go out and provide work, you don't have sick leave, you don't have annual leave. All of that is determined by you putting your own money away. So if you haven't got all that money saved up to pay yourself and pay your expenses, if you have to be off work for 6 months, then that's where having this type of insurance, like personal accident and illness insurance, could come really in handy. So on that, how much is it going to actually cost you to get all of these insurances? Depending on the level of insurance that you require, which insurances you take on, and your personal circumstances, these costs can vary, but generally speaking, from our research, we've found that it ranges between $350 and $1,200 per year. So before we summarize all this, let's go over some of the important considerations when you're actually purchasing your policy. So number one is make sure you check exactly what is covered and exactly what is excluded. You can often do this on the website or by reading the PDS or by calling the insurer and speaking to someone, or maybe even their online chat. A quick little tip as well, if you're calling them or using their online chat, if you have the ability to get a transcript emailed to you or the call recording emailed to you, that way you can document that with your insurance documents later, so that if a claim comes up and they do try and say, oh no, that's an exclusion, but you have evidence of them saying that it's not, that can back you up in the event that you have to make a claim. The second thing you want to make sure that you check is coverage limits. So often for support work, you'll want a minimum of at least $1 million of professional indemnity insurance and $10 million for public liability. However, again, that is not advice. This is just general information from research that I have done and that we personally have done with our insurance for my partner's business as an independent provider. Now, we already mentioned this one, but you want to double check your exclusions. You're particularly looking for things that you will do as part of your business that might be excluded in part of their policy. And if you decide that those things are a key part of your business and you want to be covered for them, make sure to speak to the insurer and see if it can be included, or perhaps you might need to find a different insurer, that will cover that. The next thing to check is how much is your excess going to be. So sometimes you'll have a very minimal excess, but maybe you'll pay more per month or more per year, and other times you'll dial the excess right up, and that'll bring your monthly or yearly premium down. This is ultimately going to be a decision between you and your insurer, but it's definitely something to double check before you hit purchase. Another one is waiting periods, making sure that they're either short or perhaps starting your insurance earlier than you are going to start getting clients, so that those waiting periods are already over by the time you've taken on your clients. When it comes to accident and illness insurance for yourself, make sure that sole trader or self-employed income is covered, and also check if they have a way that they determine that so that you can make sure that you are actually going to be covered for your normal income. Some of them will only cover PAYG employee-based income and not sole trader, so it's definitely something you want to double check. One of the last things here is to check that you aren't getting duplicated policies. And what I mean by that is sometimes your super fund will have already had insurance through it that you may have forgotten you did, and that particularly relates to the accident and illness insurance. A lot of people end up with that through their super fund, and basically what you want to check there is, does that still cover me for sole trader based income and activities, or should I cancel that perhaps and get my own for the business that I know covers everything I need? And lastly, you may be able to get bundled insurance. So what I mean by that is, with ours, we get public liability and professional indemnity bundled into one, and that costs about $400 a year. But that can be significantly cheaper and easier come renewal time if you have both of your policies bundled into one and not having to do two renewals, pay two separate bills, and probably end up paying more as well. Alright, so let's summarize. Public liability covers you for things like damage to property and injuries to other people, not yourself, and you generally are going to get $5 to $10 million worth of coverage for public liability. Professional indemnity covers you for things like claims of negligence or breach of duty, and you will generally get between $1 and $5 million of coverage for that. Accidental injury and illness insurance is for protecting you against your own personal injuries or illness, and will generally cover for up to 85% of your normal income. According to the NDIS, if you are a registered provider, you must get appropriate insurance, whatever that is deemed to be. However, as we stated, unregistered providers are most likely going to end up with insurance as well. In regard to the cost, insurance costs seem to vary between about $350 to $1,200 per year, depending on which policies you take on, what level of coverage you get, the insurer you pick, and then obviously your personal circumstances and risks. And then lastly, we covered some important considerations like checking exclusions, making sure you don't get duplicated policies, and potentially bundling your policies. So now that we've got insurance handled, the next thing that we want to look at is to make sure that you've got all the relevant checks, qualifications, training, etc. that clients are pretty much going to demand of you. So we're going to look at what those are, how you can get them, which ones you need, which ones you may just want to get voluntarily, and cover all of that in our next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you then.